Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. This is the Thursday early edition here with Steve. Shout out to Taylor, who I believe is working a football game tonight. Maybe it's a different sport, but he's actually making more money than we would ever make on a podcast. So that's why Taylor's not with us. But Steve, we're about to begin a deep dive into the safety class. And we have 31 safeties we're going to be breaking down over the next 3 weeks. So we have 10 of them tonight. What is your feel on the 10 guys that we're talking about tonight? We have draftable grades on most of them?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Most of them. And, as we get through the next couple of weeks, our audience is going to see maybe some more familiar names. But it's important to talk about them because whereas maybe the safety class of the draft eligible may not be that top heavy, we'll be speaking in a couple of weeks about Caleb Downs from Ohio State. We'll talk Dylan Thieneman of Oregon, but it really isn't very top heavy. You're really seeing a lot of potential day 2, day 3 guys that I think most of them by and large are draftable. There are some good traits. There are some, as with any player, some concerns. But yeah, I think this is a great exercise in terms of education and a preview of what things could look like come April.
Yeah. And so this podcast is being recorded in early November. So there is still about a third of the season left for most of these players, assuming that they are still healthy and not injured or out for the year. But a couple things I'd like to point out about safeties, right? Not all safeties are created equal. And what I mean by that is, we'll talk about box safeties. We're going to talk about, does the safety play too high? Can the safety play single high? Not every safety can play single high. So I guess your default is if a safety can play too high, they have potential to play in the league. If they can play single high, they may have a better chance to stand out on a successful defense, because if you can play single high, it means that you can use another player somewhere else on defense.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. It also comes down to, special teams contributions with these guys. That's a lot of times, easy way to make a roster if you're impressing a special teams coordinator or a scout who's, being on the lookout for it. But we're also going to be talking about converted corners into safeties and these hybrid, slot safety guys, because that's certainly been the way the league has been going.
Absolutely. So a couple of other things, just again, to reiterate. So our goal is to cover every player drafted in rounds 1 through 5. We're covering 31 safeties. So, hey, Ryan Sparks, it's good to see you here. We're covering 31 safeties. On average, between 17 and 20 get drafted. And as Steve and I were just chatting during the intro, we think that the draftable grades is going to far exceed the average number of safeties drafted. The 10 that we're doing tonight: Xavier Nwankpa from Iowa, Lewis Moore from Indiana, Miles Scott from Illinois, Earl Little Jr. from Florida State, Isaiah Nwokobia from SMU, Jelani McDonald from Texas, Rod Moore from Michigan, Keionte Scott from Miami. That's one of those hybrid players that Steve was just telling you about. We're covering him in the safety group, and there's a reasonable chance you might see him in a cornerback episode too. Zakee Wheatley from Penn State, Amare Ferrell from Indiana. And the first one we're going to cover is Xavier Nwankpa, 6'2", 213 pounds. Steve, what else do you want to tell everybody about the Iowa safety?
Yeah, so you hit on the measurables. He's long, a strong physical NFL caliber safety. He is a senior, so he's definitely somebody that we're going to see. He spent his career at Iowa. He's not a transfer. He was a 5-star recruit out of Pleasant Hill, Iowa, Southeast Polk High School. He was one of the highest, if not the highest rated recruit in Iowa football history. Fortunately, he's been healthy throughout his career. I forgot to mention he did play both sides of the ball in high school, wide receiver and defensive back. He's amassing a nice season in 2025 to add on to, his already good career. Just going by PFF stats, as we've done various shows before, I'm a big fan of highlighting, a lot of experience, a lot of snaps. So 425 snaps, pretty much equally split between run defense and coverage. His run defense grade is really good, as of press time, 85.5. And he's been used a bit in the box, a little bit in the slot, but primarily he's been a free safety, 321 snaps as a free safety. He makes a little bit of impact on special teams. I'll just take you through a couple of things that I watched that I really like. We'll go back to 2023 versus Wisconsin, where he had 12 tackles, 1 interception, and that was his career high grade of 91.4. This year against Penn State, he was very impactful, an INT and a forced fumble. He contributed 3 years ago in the Music City Bowl. Some other things. Yeah, it really comes down to, the Penn State game. Physical tackler. He's versatile in schemes. I just would like to see him be a better finisher as a tackle. He needs to be a little better at shedding his blocks. But yeah, it's encouraging.
So is your grade on Nwankpa draftable?
Yeah. Just to give you the exact number, right now I have him he is day 3 would be, he is an early to mid day 3. I think it could be bottom of round 4 to early round 5. That's where I am with him.
Okay. Next player, Lewis Moore from Indiana, 5'11", 200. What else do you have?
Yeah, so let me get him pulled up. 5'11", it's a good height for a safety. I think, as we were just talking about with Nwankpa, you're starting to see these bigger guys, but he ran a 4.38 in high school. He is a fifth-year senior. Actually, hang on. I pulled up the wrong Moore. Give me 1 second. I pulled up Rod Moore. My bad. Just 1 second. Back to the notes. Give me 1 second here. Yep. Strong safety, playmaking, nose for the ball. Right now, I've got around, probably late day 2, maybe early day 3 for him. Let's see what else we could pull up. And Lewis Moore. There we go. Yeah, 5'11", 200 pounds. He's got that compact athletic build. Probably, like I said, late day 2, maybe early day 3. He's got good closing burst in his coverage. He's sturdy. He is that slot hybrid. I mean, Atlanta's getting a lot of buzz right now, and rightfully so. Number 2 team in the country. And, the secondary will also be talking a little bit more about Indiana later on in this program. But he has gone through some transfers. He started at JUCO at Navarro College. He spent some time, 2 seasons at Indiana. Then he jumped to Ole Miss, and then he came back to Indiana for his final season. Supposedly he's a good leader. And like I said earlier, he's adaptable, across multiple defensive schemes. Let's just go through some of the PFF data. So 431 snaps, 280 of them in coverage, 148 in run defense. Negligible in terms of any pass rush. His overall grade is an 81.2, but his coverage grade is 87.2. He's lined up about a third of his snaps in the box, 237 at free safety. So there's, where I talk about with his versatility. He had a game in 2023 against Michigan during his first stint with the Hoosiers, 11 tackles, a forced fumble, game-sealing interception. This year, he was absolutely fantastic, against Illinois. And, his ball skills and his situation awareness were on display versus Purdue. I haven't seen any struggles really this year. There were a couple of games I remember last year. But yeah, definitely think he's going to see, potential be called late day 2, most likely day 3. Just good deep field awareness, outstanding zone, smooth transitions. And he is an asset on special teams. So there we are with that.
Yep. And one thing I forgot to mention in the intro, and you had pointed out special teams a couple times. If you're drafted as a safety, the likelihood that you start year 1 is low. Like if you're drafted on day 1 or day 2, you are likely going to project as a starter at safety. But a vast majority of safeties are day 3 guys. And for them to contribute, they need to play 4-phase special teams. Gunners on coverage and on the kick return teams. That's part of what they're on the roster for. So I like that you pointed out Lewis Moore's special teams. So the next safety we're going to talk about, Miles Scott from Illinois, 5'11", 210, and this is an aggressive player. What else do you want to tell everybody about Miles Scott?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head in calling him aggressive. Another guy that could be hybrid. I think he excels or will excel in that free safety position. 3-star athlete. He was originally recruited as a wide receiver. He switched to defense after his first season, and he emerged as a starter in 2023. So to your point that you just made, your best availability, right? And no significant injuries, no injury history. He's got 42 tackles so far on the season. I believe that is through this past weekend, 28 solo. 1 interception. I'm not concerned about that with 3 passes defense. His rank in PFF, again, I don't put too much, stock, but he doesn't have a great overall defensive grade. It's only a 65, but, he's flashing to me at 83.5 on his run defense. This is a guy, he may not be the ball hawk safety, but he could sniff out those running backs and he could come down, and he is a good tackler, a really good tackler. There's a couple of things that I want to highlight. A couple of weeks ago against Minnesota, I put in a note. I watched that game. I did watch live rather than scouring tape after the fact. But he dropped from the deep half. He tracked the go route for the interception early in the season, fourth quarter, getting late in the game. I think it was about 3, maybe 4 minutes left in the game. He broke up a pass to seal the win. He closed down on a post route. And like I said, he's a physical tackler, strong pursuit, high effort. He really diagnoses the run very quickly. He's got the experience at different alignments, free safety, box, the slot. He's very communicative in that Illinois defense on the back end. I miss Xavier, his namesake. His hand strength is good, his finishing technique. So exciting player. In terms of where I have him graded, he is a mid-day 3 for me right now. Yep. Mid-day 3. So round 5, maybe early round 6, but
Yep.
That's where I have him right now.
So a couple things to think about with the safety, right? And going back to like the PFF grades, Illinois asked Miles Scott to do a lot of things. He is one of the 2 or 3 most impactful players on that defense. Whereas if we compare him to the Indiana safety that we covered earlier that had a higher PFF grade, I think Scott is going to go higher than the and I'm already escaping the name. Give me a minute. Lewis Moore. I think Scott goes higher than Moore. Scott is asked to do a lot for Illinois. He's got to go fill in the run. He's got to make plays in the passing game. Illinois needs Miles Scott to be a great player for their defense to be good. Whereas Lewis Moore is playing with a lot of people that are going to get drafted.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of NFL talent in Indiana. There is a reason that Indiana is contending for a national title. And Illinois, we don't know if they're even going to be a top 6 team in the Big Ten. Right? There's a big difference in the let's say the results or the ceilings of both of those teams. So this is definitely a name to watch on day 3. If your team drafts him, you're likely projecting him to be a downhill safety. He does have plays where he breaks up the pass, but if you watch Illinois play, Miles Scott's best plays are going to be when he is attacking the line of scrimmage.
Yep. Right? I agree. And I'd like, we'll see where he winds up going, but I think he's a really good fit for these, primarily cover 2, cover 3 schemes, heavy zone defense. Just let him come up and sniff out that line of scrimmage.
Okay. So this was a player we covered before. So Owen did a mid-season check-in on the safeties about a month ago. Earl Little Jr. from Florida State is not being talked about very much. 6'1", 199. Steve, where do you have Earl Little right now?
Yeah, right now I've got him, rounds 4, 5, 6, 7. He's right now for me, probably in that round 5, round 6. I will be honest. I don't watch a lot of Florida State. So I got to go back and look at tape. I don't watch a lot of Florida or Miami either. Maybe that's, a little bit of prejudice of living in the state of Florida. But you mentioned the numbers and I said it a minute ago. I love seeing these 6 foot plus, defensive backs, whether they're, corners or safeties or the hybrids, guys that'll play in the big nickel. I love it. He did originally commit to Alabama before he flipped over. Local kid, Plantation, Florida, right by Fort Lauderdale area. 4-star recruit. He was a top 100 national prospect. He was ranked number 10 in terms of quarterbacks, the class of 2022. He does have, let's see. No, he is a redshirt junior, so he could go back. He might. When we talk about guys, he might be a guy. He did miss most of his first season due to the injury. That was the redshirt year. Managed his workload through 2023 as he transitioned more, into a full-time role, and he was fully healthy in 2024. No limitations this year. His coverage is probably his best attribute. I don't think he stands out too much in terms of his rush defense. He's played over 440 snaps total. Look at, he had a great game against Miami, pass defense and interception. He exhibited that strong coverage skills on the vertical routes. NC State, he forced a fumble on a wide receiver screen. He's got very fluid movement, strong transition skills from that corner background and position. But like I said, he needs to be a bit more consistent with his tackling, certainly with his run defense. He can over anticipate some of his concepts, his route concepts. But he fits Florida State and what they're doing there. And I don't even know what they're doing there anymore. But they're aggressive. They're a coverage heavy defense. They emphasize the versatility. I think he would be a good fit for a team like the Eagles or maybe the Seahawks, teams that are using that zone match and that hybrid nickel package. There are guys I've spoken to within the draft professor community. They think he's more of an early day 3. I disagree respectfully. I know somebody that's put maybe a Darnell Savage comp on him. I think that's a little generous at this point, but yeah, maybe he goes back. I don't mean to not sound excited about him, but I'm not excited.
No, and that's okay. Like, again, so we have 31 safeties. What Owen liked about Earl Little is Owen thought that there's a ceiling here that hasn't been tapped yet.
I would agree with that. Yep.
Right. So whether that's a return to school or if you already have 2 entrenched starters at safety, but one of them is approaching their age 30 year, this is a good guy to bring into the building. And Steve, you alluded to the fact that he is a corner that is converted to safety. There's a couple of them in this class. So if you need to do some looks where you need a safety to cover a wide receiver in man-to-man and some of your blitz looks, Earl Little, with his cornerback experience, can give you that. There was a reason that Micah Hyde was so valued in Buffalo, right? Because he was a corner converted to safety.
Great comparison.
Yeah, you could use Micah Hyde in some of the looks if you needed to blitz and move a safety out to cover a wide receiver. So there's things you can do with Earl Little. Don't let the safety fool you. Look at that, 6'1". There's not going to be a lot of safeties that are going to have the measurements of a corner. So definitely pay attention to Earl Little. If I had to guess, it's return to school, and we'll talk about him more in 12 months, but we shall see.
Agree.
Next player, Isaiah Nwokobia from SMU. What did you think?
Yeah, so he's a senior, so definitely coming out. I've got a late 5, round 6 on him. Let's see. We've got, the measurables. I'm right in line with you. 6'1", 205 pounds. Another, hybrid, homegrown player at SMU. He's not a transfer, from Frisco, Texas. In Reedy High School, he was a 3-star prospect. He was ranked among the top 150 safeties nationally for the class of 2021. Multi-sport athlete. I will always love that. Coming out of high school, he played basketball. Certainly great height for it. He ran track. I don't have numbers on what his 100-meter was. He is known as a very vocal, communicative leader in that SMU locker room. He had offers from Tulsa and Houston, as well as, I'm missing one, Kansas State. Durable, he's physically resilient. His preparation is outstanding. His stats for this year: 40 solo tackles, 61 total, 1 interception. Let's see. His ranking isn't way up there. His run defense, like we talked about before, I think it was with Moore, that's where he excels. But 657 defensive snaps and currently with a rush grade of 82.6. Primarily used a little bit more than 50-50 as a free safety, but he has done a lot in the box. Now, the one thing going back to the grading thing is he was somewhere, I believe, I could pull it up. He had a 41.7 grade in 2021. Okay. Didn't have a lot of usage. 66.6 in 2022. He rocketed up the charts 2 years ago in 23 with an 87.3, slightly improved in 2024. The season's not over, so I'm not judging anything. But, from going back to whatever I could go back to from memory as well as tape, you just really saw a difference in his processing speed, his reaction timing, and his confidence. The other thing that may impact this season was he really had a breakout when Scott Simons, I forget his name, the defensive coordinator, and he really thrived in that downhill and split zone type of scheme. Well, they made the change, and I think it's Paul Randolph. I might be wrong, but a little bit of performance regression, but it just is the scheme change. Randolph emphasizes more deeper safety rotations, fewer box snaps. So it limits his plays a little bit. But yeah, good games this year against TCU, where I can't wait till we talk about one of my favorite safeties, whether it's next week or the week after. Everybody knows how high I am on Bud Clark of TCU. But Nwokobia, he was real good in that game. Clutch third down stop on a wide receiver drag route. I forget who the receiver was. He sealed that red zone hold. Good game against Memphis, Tulane. So he's coming out. I think he'll hear his name. I think we're looking probably round 5, round 6.
Okay, so one of the newest names added was Jelani McDonald from Texas. 6'2", 199. Steve, what else do you have on the Texas safety?
Yeah, so he's another guy that might be an RTS, return to school. Love the size, as you know. He is a junior, homegrown talent in Texas. He went to school at Connolly High School in Waco. 4-star athlete. He was a top 100 national recruit in 2023. Another basketball and track athlete. Notably, he was a long jumper and he was a 200-meter sprinter. He picked Texas. He had offers from Oklahoma and Texas A&M as well as TCU. He actually played both quarterback and safety in high school before he transitioned full-time to a defensive role. 30 tackles solo, 46 on the year, 2 interceptions. I think it's 5, staying by. Yeah, 5 passes defense. And he's played in 11 games. Right now, another guy who's, if you go by metrics, his run defense, an 85.7, used a lot at free safety, 249 snaps, 110 in the box, but Texas also uses him in the slot. He's run actually more snaps as a slot corner than he has as a box safety. He's just getting more confident, better pursued and disciplined, advanced, he's getting more advanced in his recognition and in the split zone coverages that Texas runs. He's been on punt coverage, about average of other guys that we've talked about so far tonight. Yeah, but I've got, in terms of traits, he's a great athlete. I talked about his track background, and he's got great closing bursts, but he can be a little over aggressive on his downhill. He vacates the deep spot, a little irresponsibly. He's got to work on that. He's got to polish his coverage recognition versus stacked alignments. So I give Jelani a return to school grade, and I definitely think, somebody we will be talking about in 12 months.
Okay, so Rod Moore from Michigan. So Rod Moore missed last season.
Yeah.
Several games this season, recovering from the same injury. I don't remember if it was a knee or...
It was a knee that he suffered in spring practice. So he missed all of 2024. And it's been, it's been a long road for him. He is he is a 5th-year senior with the Wolverines right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So what have you seen from Rod Moore since he came back this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's, slow going. I do want to talk a little bit because he does have, pre-injury when he was in high school, he had a verified 4.3840. So, hoping, knees are tough, man, but hope he could recover because this guy's got speed. I have him down. Okay, at 6 feet. Yep, we're both there. Originally, I had thought I had seen 5'11", but he's compact, despite the 6 feet. He's athletic, good range, excellent upper body strength. He was a 4-star recruit. He picked the Wolverines over the Fighting Irish, over the Cincinnati Bearcats. He had a couple of other offers. He had the reputation of being a high football IQ player. But yeah, he did March of 2024. He tore not only his ACL, but his meniscus as well. Part of the issue was he had to undergo a second procedure due to complications with the meniscus repair. He's come back this year, 2025, limited snap count. He only has about 85 snaps so far through midseason. He does have an INT. So, I certainly wouldn't go through, the PFF metrics because that wouldn't be fair. But I will say, before it all started, unfortunately going downhill, pardon the pun, with the knee injury, 2022, that was his breakout year, and he was showing elite coverage skills, elite. Very little special teams impact at this point. All that being said, and I talked about 2023. Many people know, as do you, Jim, that I am an Ohio State fan and an Ohio State truther. Not a homer, but I am a truther. But he did, it hurts to say this, he did have an interception against my Buckeyes 2 years ago. And, he contributed greatly in the Big Ten title game. But I actually think that if we can continue to see his health progress, he's a guy, obviously, that the medicals, at the combine and pro days, I think he can be an early day 3 guy. I could see him going round 4. He proven to, in that system, to be that good.
Yep. And I think out of nearly everybody that would be in this draft class but doesn't get drafted, he's going to be highest on the priority free agent list because of the breakout that you alluded to, right? So there's definite risk with the knee, right? And he hasn't fully came back from it yet. But if you get him in your building and you can keep, he can like rehab himself into playing shape on the practice squad. This is a player that you just give him time to come back, because if he hits his old form, you're getting an all-pro safety
at a major discount. Discount.
There's significant risk, but the reward for that risk is he could have been safety 2 in this class behind Caleb Downs. He's not there now. There's no way he's there now. But we've seen the ceiling for Rod Moore, and he just has to get back to his old form. So this is a player I'm definitely cheering for. I want to see him come back. I would love to see him in Buffalo's building, but it's probably going to be as an undrafted player. I don't think Buffalo would take the chance unless the knee completely checks out. But it's also obvious that if he's not getting a full set of snaps at Michigan right now, he's not all the way back yet either. Right?
Correct. Yep. Correct.
Okay. So this is one that I want to spend some time on. So I think Keionte Scott in the simulator is a corner. I don't know if I flipped him to safety yet.
You're right.
He is probably playing in the slot for Miami, but the question is whether or not he would be a slot player at the NFL level or he would be a safety. And I believe he was at Auburn before Miami. But Steve, what do you have on Keionte Scott?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Interestingly enough, out of a lot of these guys that we're talking about tonight, Keionte Scott has gotten the most on the D line. Now it's double digits, it's not triple digits, but 42 snaps on the D line. But yeah, you hit it right on the head. He's been 305 snaps as a slot corner, and that's it. 116 in a box. He's gotten a couple of snaps at the wide spot, but, completely negligible at free safety. Here's where I love this guy. Go to my notes. 1 second. So he gives you, number one, he gives you that nickel slot versatility, right? But Keionte Scott is a special teams weapon. He is an elite return man, and he has led the SEC in punt return average in 2023, including a punt return touchdown. The production did drop a bit, but he's dangerous as a returner. A lot of times you don't see the safeties as a returner. You see these nickel guys or these corners, but even maybe as not a return guy, contribute as on some special teams as a gunner. But anyway, he's lean. I have him down. Let's see, what do we have him? Yep, 6 foot, 192 pounds. He's lean. He's got an athletic build, solid play strength. This is a guy that I think is going to have some, I take the combine, or what some of us call the underwear Olympics, with a grain of salt. I wouldn't be surprised if he runs a sub 4.4, on his 40. He's got quick acceleration. He's got the ability to cover these match these slot wide receivers. Out of the guys we're talking about tonight, the 10 or 11 guys, he may have the best hips in terms of his fluidity. Don't take that the wrong way. They're very loose, top tier, short area agility. He is a senior, so he's definitely coming out. This is his one and only year at Miami. He started at Snow College, which is JUCO, and then he spent 3 years at Auburn. He was one of the top ranked in JUCO defensive backs nationally in 2022. Obviously played at Auburn, so he's got that SEC experience and really developed into a starter level corner there. He transferred to Miami to reunite with some of the former assistants and give himself some more experience and more of an aggressive, blitz heavy scheme that, better fits his style. Any downturn his last year in Auburn, it was not, knock on wood, not injury related. It was just really to scheme and usage. But his overall grade is through the roof. PFF has him right now is at a 90 with a 91.6 rush defense. And his coverage grade is, I think, 84.8. I had that. He had a huge dip in terms of his rankings and his performance, 23 to 24. But, Auburn was really using him as a boundary corner last season in a cover 3 press system. So that really limited, his strengths in terms of his vision and, not taking advantage of that lack of speed. Definitely scheme driven. And, now he's being used at Miami in a skill set that suits him rather. Let's see. There was a certain game. He had a great sack this year against Clemson from the slot blitz. He showed his timing and his short area burst. He had a tackle for a loss against Florida State early in the game. I think it was first quarter, just closing speed downhill. Anyway, in terms of, things I love about him, things that I'd like to see, that he can improve on when he gets, as he gets through his draft process, through his training, and then, assuming he is drafted, and I do think he's drafted, I think he's a late day 2, maybe around, around 3. But his processing, his route anticipation, he's aggressive, and he's technically sound. He's got a high motor, diagnoses and recognizes plays. He's a film study nut. He could be a little over aggressive on the RPOs and just needs to refine the angles. But yeah, he's a guy I'm excited about.
Yeah, I definitely like the day 2 call out for Keionte Scott. And this is not a player that too many people were talking about in the summer scouting, right? Like, we knew who he was on Auburn. We knew he flipped to Miami, but the position change is really rocketing him up draft boards, because you're essentially getting a defensive back where it's like basically I'm going to call him Jordan Hancock on steroids, right? Because Jordan Hancock can play safety, he can play slot, right? Keionte Scott, you're going to be able to get a guy that can play safety, he can play slot, he can play boundary. So you can draft him, and if you have a few other moving parts in your secondary, you're going to be able to just make him one of those moving parts where you don't necessarily know where he's going to line up. So I am really excited to see what the draft community, like how he grades Keionte Scott. When people do big boards, I'm curious if they want him as a corner or a safety. So there's going to be a lot of conversation on Keionte Scott for the next 4 months. And actually, I guess we're 6 months from the draft, so it's going to be 6 months. So
yeah.
Okay, so is this the last one? No, we got
Nope, we still got Amare Ferrell. Yep.
So Zakee Wheatley from Penn State, 6'2", 202. And I know from some talk backstage, this is your highest ranked safety out of this group today. What do you like about Zakee Wheatley from Penn State?
Yeah. So we've got the graphic up of the size, 6'2", 202. Again, love these bigger guys coming through. Redshirt senior for this year. Definitely a bright spot for that Penn State defense. I'm a big fan of Danny Dettis-Sutton. I think I'm a little higher on him at the edge position than other draft professors or even the larger buy and scale draft community. And Zakee Wheatley is probably my second favorite player on that Penn State defense. Let's go through his background a little bit. He was a top 50 safety coming out of high school in Maryland, Archbishop Spalding in 2021. He played wide receiver and corner in high school. He lettered in basketball and track. Now, he's another guy. He actually started at corner, but converted to safety early in his career. 54 tackles, 39 solo, 33 passes defense. He's got a sack, a forced fumble, an interception. He's nationally ranked right now 25th among FBS safeties with an overall grade of 85. Another high rush defensive grade, 82.3. Great coverage grade at 84.5. Over 400 snaps, 200 plus on rush defense, almost 200 on coverage. Primarily, he's done some slot corner work. About 12-15% of his snaps has been at the slot corner, but primarily, free safety as well as box. He did have a slight dip, 21 to 2022, but he improved in 23. He really scaled in 24, but this is the year that he's really, showing off. Just a great a solid 4-year contributor, 33 career games. Not too many games that I could think of off the top of my head, that I was like, certain things. I mean, the Orange Bowl against Notre Dame, I think it was. Yeah. Great there. I think he had double-digit tackles. He had an interception and a sack there. I mean, that was really a career-defining performance. We ignore any good games against Ohio State. No, he did have a good game there. He actually had a forced fumble, inside the 10-yard line that saved the touchdown earlier this year. But great football IQ. He's good at diagnosing from deep alignment. He's got the size and the length that'll allow him to match up with some of these tight ends. And, we've talked on this show, Taylor and I, that we're seeing, these different size profiles now of these tight ends. We are seeing a bunch of guys that are in that 6'2", 6'3" range, just as much as we're still seeing that traditional, monster, 6'5", 6'6". So Zakee Wheatley, he's got the size and the length to match him up against these tight ends, as well as the bigger wide receivers, if it's in man coverage. He's a good form tackler and he's reliable, good leverage. He wraps up really well. He could be, we talked about this backstage, right? Or maybe, once we were live, he's a guy, You could get him split safety, box alignments. Oh, yes. And where he might be important to an NFL team, single high. He could play those single high looks. And he's a good communicator and tone setter. You know, a little over aggressive in some of the angles, but that's typical of what we see coming out, until they develop. He's fit that that Jim Knowles Franklin scheme because of that hybrid safety structure, right? Because of his intelligence, because of his versatility. He can work well in quarters coverage, cover 3. Another thing that pains me to say this, I think he could be a good fit for your Buffalo Bills, or maybe, or maybe the Mike Tomlin Steelers. But that's actually, as I type up my notes in prep for the show and I start thinking about schemes and things, as a Jet fan, I don't want to face him, but I think he's a great fit for the Bills. I do have him as a mid, maybe a late day 2, just based on the intangibles, the size, the leadership, the production. He's a guy that I've looked at comparing him to a Jordan Poyer, or maybe secondarily a former Jet, Marcus May, because both May and Wheatley have a similar range and the tackling approach. My comparison for Jordan Poyer is just the physicality and the intelligence and that multi-role.
Yep. So if I have to put a stake in the ground, Zakee Wheatley, Buffalo Bill round 3, and if he is on the board round 4, I would be shocked if he fell by Buffalo round 4. So Penn State is one of the most scouted schools for Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was telling Jerry, what if we took Viga Ione in round 1? And Jerry's like, I love the player, but we don't need to take an offensive lineman round 1. So then the question would be, well, who from Penn State is Buffalo looking at if the scouts and the GM keep going to their games? Wheatley, Buffalo needs a safety that can do single high, right? That's not what Cole Bishop can do it some, but we need a safety to complement Cole Bishop. There's a few other guys that as you and Taylor dive in, I'm going to ask about single high. I think of the group of 10 that we have today, I think the only other safety, let me go back and look at the list. So Rod Moore could do single high if he's fully healthy. Earl Little can do single high. Yep. So out of all the safeties that we are covering today, Zakee Wheatley would be if your team wants to do single high looks, Zakee Wheatley has a target on himself in a good way. Because not every safety can, but Zakee Wheatley can. So it would not shock me to see him day 2, and he may not even fall to Buffalo in round 3 at the tail end of round 3. So
if I was mocking for you, if I was mocking for you, then I'd give you a kicker in all the rounds. And not do anything else. No, but if I was mocking for the Bills, my feeling is Buffalo is going to the Super Bowl. I know right now, the Colts look great and Kansas City may or may not be ascending. Denver certainly knows how to put together a fourth quarter with that defense. I'm going with Buffalo being due. I'm not going to say if they're going to win, but I will say I expect Buffalo to have either the 31st or the 32nd pick in the draft. No, I agree with Jerry. I don't think you're taking an interior offensive lineman at the bottom of round 1. If I had a guess, if I was Brandon Beane, and you don't want me as Brandon Beane, I think that's a great opportunity for some of the wide receivers. Go get one, because if you're picking 31, 32, that's pretty much second round. You're just benefiting from that 5th-year option.
Yep.
So I think, round 1, you attack that wide receiver thing. I'm taking Wheatley. with that 63rd or 64th pick. That's what I would do. And then, if you're focused on Penn State, well, maybe Danny Dennis Sutton at the bottom of round 3 or, round
I don't
4.
have him that high.
Yeah, I know. I stand out other than others. I've got a round 4 grade on him, but I don't. Maybe he makes it to the end of round 4. Well, it wouldn't be the end because of the comp picks. But
I think, okay, Wheatley the player. If it was, let's say, the safety class last year or the year before, day 2, and I don't know that we would question it. The issue is, and again, we kicked off the show with this, we're covering 31 safeties, right? And nearly every safety that we covered today that you had a draftable grade on, Steve, you said round 5, 6. Mm-hmm. But, there's only like 64 picks in rounds 5 and 6, right?
I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Rod Moore, goes round 4, somebody is like, oh, I'm going to work with him. But yeah, I mean, Wheatley definitely has my highest grade out of this group. We're going to cover the guys, but in my opinion, right now, as it stands today, November 6th, 2025, I've only got first round grade on one safety, and that's Caleb Downs. I'm very high on Kamari Ramsey and Dylan Thieneman and Emmanuel McNeil Warren. Okay. Those are day 2 guys for me. I haven't watched enough yet of AJ Hawley. I'll be diving into him over the next week. But, and there are some guys, I know Dale is a little higher on Genesis Smith and some of the other draft professors than I am. But again, I've said how much I really like Bud Clark. Owen probably likes Michael Taft of Texas a little bit more than I do, but I'm key on him, as well as Jalen Husky of Maryland. Thank you. Yep.
Yeah. So like my targets for Buffalo would be Wheatley or Husky round 3, round 4, right? Like I would have for Buffalo, I think if I have to predict, the first 2 picks are wide receiver and linebacker in some order, right? Which means safety, which is a huge need, right? The PFF grades for Buffalo safeties are among the lowest in the league, right? So safety then gets that, okay, do we take one in round 3, or if you don't like the players that are there round 3, it's definitely going to be a candidate for a double dip like round 4 or 5.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you a receiver in round 1, and it's going to kill me, but I'll give you Aiden Fisher of Indiana in round 2. You taking it?
Well, and I don't know that Fisher is grading at round 2. So I love the player, but I don't know that a lot of people are telling me that's still too high for Fisher.
It might be.
Yep.
But yeah, you'll get into that with the other professors. Yeah. I got to stay in my lane with the safeties, but yeah, I think it's I definitely agree with you there.
Okay. The last safety we're covering today, Amare Ferrell from Indiana, 6'2", 202 pounds. What else do you want to share with everybody about Amare Ferrell, the other Indiana safety?
Yeah. So, I've seen something. They didn't list him as a safety. They list him as a defensive back, which was interesting. But he's a guy that could be a return to school. And right now, today, I may be leaning that way. He is a junior, comes out of Florida. He was ranked 578th nationally and number 53 in terms of safeties in the class of 23. That would be, Florida State wanted him, Louisville, the Hurricanes, Miami Hurricanes. It looks like he was that he didn't play multiple sports, and that's okay. 29 tackles on the year, 14 solo. Where he's excelling over the other guys we've discussed, he's got 3 interceptions. So that puts him up there. His rank right now is 122 among all safeties. He's okay. His overall grade is a 77. He's got 465 snaps, and 160 of them are in rushing defense, 305 in coverage. He's primarily a free safety. He's done some work in the box. He's done a little bit less than that as a slot corner. He had a game, he contributed with an interception at the beginning of the year against Old Dominion. He had a nice game in September against Illinois, another good one against Iowa. A good one this November 6th. So yeah, this past week, I guess, or a week before against Maryland. No, it was this week. That's right. They were in Maryland. So he's chipping away. He's improving. I don't know. He's got good instincts. He's good anticipation in his coverage. His hands are reliable, right? He's got 7 career interceptions. He's got the length, the body control that will allow him to, line up against, the larger targets in man coverage. Good spatial awareness, in cover 3 rotations. He's not a great tackler at this point. I think he struggles a little bit in his RPO recognition and reading the play actions. Just average top end speed. It kind of limits his deep range. Maybe you want to see him be able to add some more downhill impact plays. I mean, look, Kurt Signetti, he runs a multiple look defense, with, again, the hybrids, right? So the size, the instincts, the range, it fits well for him. He may be a good fit for the Buccaneers if I think of teams that it could be. I've got a midday 3 on him. I am confident in around 5 if he enters, but I'll be honest, I'd rather see him return to school. And I think he's going to be, a firm. I would do this show with you a year from now and feel confident putting him as a day 2, for the 2027 draft. So yeah.
Okay. Well, that finishes up the safeties that we are covering this week. So I'm going to pull up the list for next week. So here are the 11, and Taylor will be back next week.
He better be.
So there are 11 safeties that we are covering next week. And keeping in mind that on average, between 17 and 20 get drafted, and we still have 21 safeties to cover. Tao Johnson from Utah, Keionte Sabb from Alabama, A.J. Halsey from LSU, D.Q. Smith from South Carolina, Robert Spears Jennings from Oklahoma, Bishop Fitzgerald from USC, Jalen Husky from Maryland, V.J. Payne from Kansas State, Devin Neal from Virginia, Nick Anderson from Wake Forest, and Wydett Williams from Ole Miss. So those are the 11 next week, and then the week after will be the final 10. So, Steve, do you want to let everybody know about all of the content you will be making between now and your next podcast on the Draft Professor next week?
Well, yes, they're big dreams and short on time. But, well, to that point, I spend a lot of my time preparing for this show. So, therefore, my own content. No, but you can find me on X Twitter at Steve SWFL. That is also the YouTube channel. I do a lot of NFL stuff, inclusive of the other draft professors in there. I am a Jet fan, so the name of the show is Talk Tape and Turbines. The turbines symbolizes the Jets. I will tell you, there will be a show this weekend about what's gone on post-trade deadline with the JETS, Jets. Also, normally he's joining us on Thursdays, Taylor Chakowski. He had another commitment, as Jim said before, but he and I podcast together. We do different game previews and things like that. So I believe we're hoping to record tomorrow and get that out over the weekend. But yeah, that's where you can find me, and certainly 7 p.m. Eastern every Thursday right here.
Yeah, so Steve, it's awesome to have you on the channel. If you are watching this, go to Twitter, give Steve a follow, find his podcast, hit that subscribe. While you're looking for his podcast, if you can also hit the subscribe for the Draft Professor channel, please and thank you. That is really the best thank you can give if you like this content. So Draft Professor, we are here every day, twice a day, 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern. So this podcast is immediately followed by EJ Holt and Andrew Harbaugh, and they are doing their final running back podcast tonight. So EJ and Andrew have sorted through approximately 44 running backs. Tonight is the last show. They are covering 10. And when they're done with their running backs, they will be able to give a running back big board for what the draftable running backs look like. And like I said, it's November. So, every draft professor is doing a deep dive on a specific position. We're podcasting on it. And what you're going to get sometime in November or December is you're going to get everybody's boards. So you'll be able to get Steve's and Taylor's safety boards here in about 3 weeks. And they're going to tell you kind of how the safety class stacks up from their perspective. But that being said, for Steve, for Taylor, for myself, thank you very much for tuning in. For the 110 people at the Draft Professor, we thank you very much, and we will see you on a podcast again in about 1 hour.